The HMSC Audacity drifted slowly to a stationary orbit over their best guess at a landing spot. Inside, Captain Emily Shaw prepared for what could very well be the most important mission of her life. First, diplomatic contact with a sentient species, the life on third planet of the primary star in the system. Initial contact had been made months prior with a probe. The life seemed alien but capable of technology. So far they had shown no indications of hostility, but that could easily change. So far everything about them was a big unknown. Power was detectable, resource manipulation was detectable, but past reading the energy signatures the technology used to accomplish that seemed completely alien. Some theories were it was biotechnology. Leaving her first officer on the bridge, she made her way with a choice crew and a unit of Marines to a landing shuttle. In the shuttle she sat in the passenger seat, her fingers tapping a steady rhythm on the armrest. She gazed out at the alien expanse, her mind racing with anticipation and trepidation. They looked like fungi. Their sensory organs were still a bit of a mystery, 2 thick legs and 2 spindly arms that ended in a series of scylla-like fingers. Luckily, when the first Earth probe landed on this planet, it had done nothing they took as hostile. As strange as they and their technology seemed, they at least seemed peaceful-natured. Lieutenant Raj Patel, the shuttle's pilot, glanced at his console.
As reported, the local atmosphere seems breathable and hospitable. This is where their signals came from when we got to orbit. So I think this is the spot we were meant to land at. Granted, that signal could have meant stay away or we will fire.
They all laughed nervously at the dark humor. So far communication had proven impossible, which is what led to the HMSC Audacity being sent to the system. Captain Shaw nodded.
Well, it's time, let's go make history.
She stood wearing full-dress uniform, not that the aliens would understand it, but she was a British officer and there were protocols to be maintained. She strutted off the small shuttle and onto what looked like a plain dirt field, but on stepping on the surface it felt spongy as if it was a tough fungus of some kind. Lieutenant Rogers stepped onto it after her and remarked,
"Is that a biotechnology? Did they grow the landing area?"
He carried a backpack AI system that was advertised as being able to decipher codes, patterns and languages. As the 3 officers got off the shuttle, a couple of the fungus aliens that saw them land shambled over with a quiet, graceful movement. With no face or obvious eyes, there was a moment of awkwardness about where to look when speaking to them. Captain Shaw motioned to Lieutenant Rogers and whispered,
"Do your thing."
The lieutenant stepped forward slightly and pulled up a visual display, hoping the fungi could see. The display showed basic molecules and gave English names for them. It made it through the periodic table and began showing pictographs with numbers in English and saying the number aloud. Rogers stared on hopefully, but the fungi present seemed oblivious to it all. As the numbers ticked off, Rogers smiled back at Captain Shaw.
"I can't even tell if they can see this or hear it. Do either of you see a reaction?"
Rogers began playing it again, hoping perhaps repetition would help. The 2 fungi present were less than expressive. Mostly brown with mottled spots of white over their tops, while their bodies looked almost barked in a grayish color. They did turn slightly toward each other, but they were utterly silent, as if they couldn't make sound in the first place. As the second recording of standard numbers played through, another fungus approached. The third fungus to join looked more bipedal, its top covered in a dark red with white spots and its gray skin looked more anthropomorphic. The red coloring looked aggressive in comparison, and the 3 British officers found themselves catching their breath as it approached. The other 2 fungi flanking it and moving slightly behind, as if making it known the red one was a higher rank or station despite its smaller stature. Captain Shaw motioned for Lieutenant Rogers to try again. He pressed play and the little red fungi managed to chortle the noise. The 3 British officers were quite pleased, though as an afterthought they had no idea what significance the sound really made. Rogers said,
"Progress, at least this one can do something audible."
The red fungi began to chortle more and the AI that Lieutenant Rogers carried began trying to interpret the sounds. It was still unclear if the fungi could see, but there didn't seem to be any hostility on the part of the fungus aliens. After several minutes of the new fungus chortling, yet another fungi approached. This one was the most alien so far. It had 6 trunk-like legs with no indication of arms. It was shorter and significantly wider. Its top was a dark red with large white spots and its trunks was pockmarked with more spots of silver, white and blue. The red fungi turned, implying they did have a facing, which was a good sign. Then it chortled at the newcomer. The biggest fungus moved closer and reached out one spindly arm toward the AI Lieutenant Rogers carried. Captain Shaw.
"Start the numbers again. Maybe these things are specialized, the red one in charge, the brown spotted one more able to communicate or something."
There was a touch of frustration in her tone. So far, the only thing going right was it wasn't a violent meeting. The brown and white spotted fungus finally spoke. The words sounded wet, like spoken through a thick filter, as it held up a single scylla from its outstretched limb. Lieutenant Patel shouted,
Yes.
Only to cringe afterward as the captain glared at him for the outburst. Lieutenant Rogers slowed the numbers play back and the six-trunked fungus was soon counting in rough English. The words had an accent that would be awkward for some to understand, but it was clear enough and a huge step toward deciphering more communication. Teaching the fungi numbers seemed to be as far as things were going. For the next several hours the AI went through math and chemistry and physics. Since this AI was also programmed to look for patterns, it also played speeches, music and snippets from pop culture references from the last few hundred years. Lieutenant Rogers couldn't seem to make the next leap. He played the basics of the periodic table a few times, but it just went nowhere. One of the pop culture references was a snippet from Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Lieutenant Patel heard it and spoke over the recording as if he was at some watch party with friends rather than at a meeting of such importance.
I'm Arthur, King of the Britons.
Captain Shaw was less than amused and glared at him for the outburst. Lieutenant Patel looked sheepish and clamped his mouth shut tightly, making his lips mottle against each other. Captain Shaw, through gritted teeth, said,
You are so lucky that didn't cause an intersystem incident.
But then, something remarkable happened. Lieutenant Rogers' AI crackled to life as the brown and white spotted fungus chortled awkwardly. This time it wasn't decipherable words, just sounds as if it was trying to sound out letters. Then, even more surprisingly, the fungus repeated, Arthur, King, Britons. Captain Shaw blinked in astonishment.
Lieutenant Patel, what did you just do?
The fungus repeated and again, slowly puzzling it out till it was repeating Lieutenant Patel's words exactly. With each repetition, Lieutenant Patel felt the situation getting more severe for him. Then the little red fungus chimed in, its thick wet voice, Arthur, King of the Britons. Under her breath, Captain Shaw said,
Patel back on the shuttle, now.
Lieutenant Rogers began playing other words, trying to expand on the growing vocabulary. The brown and white spotted fungus clearly catching on more and more as he did. After a few more minutes of sound clips playing and the brown and white spotted fungus repeating, it pointed at the little red fungus and said, Red, King. Then its appendage swung around to point collectively at the other fungi present, at the Fraxus. Then pointed at the shuttle where Lieutenant Patel had retreated to, Arthur King. Again its appendage shifted, taking in the captain and lieutenant as it continued, of the Britons. Captain Shaw, in a bit of shock, realized she had to get Patel back out of here and quickly called for him. Lieutenant Patel returned in quick order in time to hear the little red fungus say, Arthur King of the Britons. One more time. Captain Shaw suppressed a laugh. This was a disaster, but Lieutenant Rogers had established communications, and now that the vocabulary was expanding, that communications was smoother and smoother. Captain Shaw kept trying to send Lieutenant Patel back to the ship, and the Fraxus kept referring to him in such a way she felt she had to keep him present. Over the next few weeks, Lieutenant Rogers and Patel worked with the AI and the biggest fungus. As the meetings went on and more communication complexity were accomplished, a few things came to light. The Fraxus were, as they appeared, a species of sentient fungi. Something more, they had evolved specialized members. The large brown with mottled spots, white and gray trunks fungi were a worker caste. The biggest six-legged spotted fungus was a specialist caste. The red was of the leadership caste. The hive mind took in information through chemical scent exchanges that were surprisingly complex and far-reaching. They did not seem to have entertainment, so explaining Monty Python to them seemed like a lost cause. While Captain Shaw had hoped only the four fungi in front of her understood that Lieutenant Patel was Arthur King of the Britons, in truth the knowledge had been shared as fact before the end of the first day with most of the surrounding area. Within a week, the whole planet was aware that the King of the Britons, Arthur, had made contact. Just to make matters worse, the Fraxus were in communication with other species, and they shared the knowledge of their peaceful meeting with the Britons. It was only a matter of time now before other human space agencies would get word that among the galactic neighborhood that the planet Britain was ruled by King Arthur.